Welcome to part 7 of Participatory Fluency. Today we're going to take a look at a theme called Looking Back. This means that we're going to talk about the past and explore different ways to express in English ideas that have as a reference the past tense, the past continuous, and other forms and phrases that we can use to express what happened before the present time. This in English can be a little bit different than in other languages, so we're going to separate these parts into one that talks about simple past and past continuous, and the other that talks about the present perfect, which is also a verb tense that makes reference to the past. You're going to understand in just a while, but there's a lot of material for you to get through in the study book, and I hope that you'll find the explanations useful and relatable to your routines. Now, when we talk about the past, we are talking about many words that we can use in order to refer to them. Yesterday, last week, last month, last year, recently, in another case. And those words are going to help you navigate making reference in the past. But a lot of people, especially in Brazil, tend to have a problem with the pronunciation of words in the past because regular verbs are pronounced with the final ed spelling, and most of the time they are T sounds. That means that when you're talking about something you've experienced, you're not going to say experienced, you're going to talk about something you experienced. This is a pronunciation tip that is very useful for you to be sounding more comprehensible and aligning to the standards of proficiency tests and things that you may be interested in taking. So this is very important in terms of how you are perceived, because people can appreciate how much you studied their language and can have more profound discussions with you as much as they can understand that you took the time and effort to study their language and many of their topics. Now, talking about the past is generally a thing that we do referring to past events or things that we've done personally. So when we talk about past events, we're gonna think about things that happened and that many people talked about. I can think about, for example, sports events. Do you remember when Brazil won the 4th World Cup? That was a historical moment, and we have the narration clear in our heads because it was very emblematic, the voice of the narrator, and it became a meme on the internet even. Now, if we talk about different kinds of historical events, we're going to make reference to them in the appropriate circumstances and formality types and these kinds of things. It's important to keep in mind that you can mention the year, and then it's important to remember that we refer to years using preposition in, and there are certain expressions that we use, like on this date, on this day, using a different preposition that in this case is on. But these are small details about language that we just need to memorize and practice, and so we can move on with other bigger topics of studying the English language. When we are able to talk about past events and share experiences with people, it is a very satisfying process of exchange and of getting to know the other. So if you think that, for example, Brazil went through historical periods that you're going to narrate and describe, and this other person who lives in a different part of the world is going to talk about their experience, you're going to have a moment of exchange. And so you're going to learn about each other's culture and about each other's country's history. This can be very, very elucidative and clarifying for you to have a moment of discussion like this and have the opportunity to hear firsthand from a real person who may be on the internet but is a real person and is telling you a story. If you're more curious, you can read about things and you can search for information on the web, but always hearing about the testimony of a person is something that enriches our knowledge of the world and our perception. So I emphasize the importance of hearing firsthand what the people have to say about what happened. This is how journalists collect information, and this is how it should be done. But we rely on the media to talk about these stories, and we have to go through a filter of seeing whether or not we trust the media and the history as it's being told to us. This is a more complicated process and involves a lot of things. Now, if we talk about personal history, we can talk about silly things. I can talk about the fact that yesterday I ate some chocolate and it was delicious. And I can mention this to a friend, and my friend can say, I don't like chocolate. I like chocolate in cake, but I don't like eating chocolate. I recently had this experience and it was very curious to me, and we had a long discussion about it and foods, and the conversation drove off to talk about many other kinds of habits based on a simple phrase that I said. I like chocolate. I just bought chocolate. Those two verbs are in the past. I like chocolate and I bought chocolate. One of them is in the past, in fact. Bought is the past of buy, so it's important to keep in mind that in this phase of your learning process you're dealing also with irregular verbs. So this means that one verb will have one form in the present and another particularly different form in the past. Those are irregular verbs, and there are some similarities like bring, brought, buy, bought, catch, caught, but we can play with the puns and with the sounds and the rhymes, but there are many verbs to learn and situations to describe and to talk about, which is good because talking about your past is something that evokes a lot of memories and creates bonds. Some people love to talk about their past, and as you get older the process gets a little bit different. Something that is important to mention is that when we talk about the past, we use expressions, we use the verbs conjugated, but we also use the expression used to, which means a habit in the past. I used to read a lot of magazines. Now nobody reads magazines anymore, it's all on the internet. But this is a fact about me, and other people may share this characteristic and this history, so bonding with these people may be interesting. People still read magazines, but it's much less common. Now, if we talk about something that happened and you want to make reference of this fact and compare it with other moments, you're gonna say, what did you listen to when Taylor Swift first came out? What did you used to listen to, for example? You can vary. What did you used to listen to when Taylor Swift first came out? Or what were you listening to when Taylor Swift first came out? Now in this case, you're trying to talk about this one artist and compare with other artists who were doing work at the same time frame and a little bit before that, right? Because coming out is something that happens for the first time. Now this may be a little bit of a different discussion. You may answer, oh, I used to listen to a lot of Madonna, for example. Answers may vary, but you'll find that the discussions can be enriching, and there's limitless possibilities of things that you can use these expressions for. Another aspect that is important to keep in mind is that when you ask questions and you answer and you put negatives in your sentences, you have to use, instead of do or does, the verbs didn't in the question and in the sentence for every time that you ask a question or you use a negative. Did you know that Brazil is one of the biggest countries in the planet? When I learned that India was the biggest democracy in the world, I didn't really think about it. So these are things that you can say that will make reference to the past and to a much broader discussion that you may have with the people that you come across. In the next section, we're going to talk about experiences, and we're going to learn a very special verb form, which is the present perfect continuous. We will expand our ability to talk about verb forms, and we will have a better understanding of the most basic ways to communicate time in English. And I hope you have by then a clear understanding of how to use these verbs. I'll see you there.